Hey, what's up? We had a question come in on tongues from our Sunday school class. And the question is about what am I supposed to be thinking when I'm speaking in tongues? Because sometimes my mind wanders, which, FYI, so does mine. Should I be praying in tongues, etc.? So I want to answer this question with a few verses. Now, I don't have a specific scripture that says, thou shalt not, do this, don't do that, okay? But we do have a few scriptures that point us in the direction of what we're supposed to be thinking. So first scripture is, I will keep those in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on me. Now the word stayed means to lean on, to rely on, to trust, which I believe ties with the scripture, lean not to your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your paths. I believe those scriptures tie well together because of the leaning not to your leaning not unto your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledging him. That totally correlates with having your mind stayed on him, and then about keeping setting your feet on right paths. Bible talks about paths of peace. It says that in one scripture that the way of peace they have not known. So there's a way of peace. And our feet are shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. So there's peace on our feet. Our shoes are the gospel of peace. The gospel should bring peace to people. It's also something that is a buffer from us and the world, peace. So there should be, in my opinion, my practice, not that I know everything, Lord, I do not, but the way I practice is that I try to have my mind relying on him, trusting on him, leaning on him when I'm praying, and when I'm not praying, but specifically when I'm praying, because that's the question that's being asked. I try to keep my mind stayed on him. I try to keep my mind relying on him. So, Paul talked about keeping our thoughts into captivity. So I try to do that when my mind starts to wander. I'm self-diagnosed ADHD, so my mind can go 100 different directions at 100 miles an hour. I have to grab those thoughts, bring them into captivity. Paul also talks about the things that we should think about, period. So when we're praying, we're also thinking about those things. Now, if we're praying for somebody, specifically for somebody, thinking thoughts of love and compassion towards them while we're praying for them, because that is what's happening is we believe his love is flowing to them through us. We're just a conduit of his love, of his compassion. Now, should you be praying in tongues? Well, 1 Corinthians 14 is a very important passage of scripture. Now, I want to pause here for just a second and say that in these upcoming classes, specifically next week, we're going to be talking about some of this stuff, but I want to answer this question because I don't want it to just be like, well, we're going to answer it next week, so just wait. Let's talk about it. So 1 Corinthians 14, Paul, this is not going to be a long video, hopefully. Paul says, for he that speaketh in an unknown tongue speaks not to men, but unto God. Now, some people act like that's a negative thing. That is not a negative thing. In verse 4, he says, he that speaketh in an unknown tongue edifieth himself. That's kind of important. The word edifieth means to build up, to grow spiritually, to advance spiritually. That's important. Paul also says in the very next verse, 5, I would that all spake with tongues. Right? It's not that some Christians are not going to speak with tongues and other Christians are. It's that I would that all. Period. All. There's not a period there, but the word all. He doesn't say all Christians spake with tongues. He says all. I would that all spake with tongues. And then he says, in verse 15, and we're jumping a few and we're going to go back. He says, I thank my God I speak with tongues more than you all. Okay, so however much the Corinthian church was speaking in tongues, Paul did it more. Now, when you get to digging in these verses, they were being a little weird with it, if we can say that. And they were trying to speak to each other in tongues. That's not the way that it's supposed to work. So in verse 14, he says, when I pray in an unknown tongue, my spirit prayeth, my understanding or my mind is unfruitful. So What that means is when I'm praying in tongues, it is my spirit, not my mind, my spirit praying to the spirit, okay? So there is a constant war between our flesh and our spirit. When we're praying in tongues, our flesh is somewhat suppressed, and we're allowing our spirit to pray to the spirit, right? We're allowing the spirit to speak through us. We're a conduit at that point. That should be the point of praying in tongues, is that our mind is unfruitful. It's not that we're praying from our own understanding, or we're praying with an agenda in mind, but we're allowing our spirit to be affected by the spirit and to pray that way. So it's spirit to spirit rather than mind to spirit. Now, he does say, I will pray with the spirit and I will pray with the understanding. So there are times that we are supposed to pray with the understanding. In other words, there are times that we are supposed to know exactly what we're praying. We're supposed to be praying in English. We're supposed to know exactly what we're praying. Okay? But we are also supposed to pray with the spirit, with our spirit. So, and he also says, I'll sing with the spirit and I'll sing with the understanding as well. So, to shorten this answer, what are you supposed to be thinking about? Well, you're supposed to be thinking about God, his love, his compassion, and that being what is flowing through you. Should you pray in tongues? Absolutely, you should be praying in tongues. You should be praying in tongues a lot, because our human understanding is so limited, okay? So we need to allow the Spirit to pray, all right? Hope that answers your question. We're going to go into depth later.